Okay, so here's our horse with no saddle on, and you take a look at him, and he's a good-looking horse. Uh, I really like this horse. He's pleasing to the eye. He's the type of horse that most people would be very happy owning, and that's why I owned him. He was my turnback horse, and he was great at that. But let's just go over his conformation real quick, and let's just start with his head. And you notice he's got a good-looking head. It's not gorgeous, but it's an attractive head. And I like the fact that he's got a nice flat forehead, no bulge between his eyes, no bulging forehead. If I see a horse with that, that's a big red flag. I've had several of them. I don't want any more. Yeah, give me a nice flat forehead. And he's got a nice large nostril, looks good. He's got the ability to take in plenty of air when he's working. He's not going to run out of air. Take a look at his mouth. He's got a nice short mouth, and that usually means he's going to have a lot of feel into your hands with the bit. If I've got a choice between taking a horse with a long mouth or a horse with a short mouth, I'll take the short mouth every single time. Now, let's look at his throat latch right behind his head. Nice and clean. He can flex at the pole, no problem. Nice. It's just a good look. And we go down his neck. Now, he's a little short in the neck. I would sure like it if he had a little bit longer neck. I mean, I can live with it the way it is, but it would just be better if it was a little bit longer. And then we go down into his shoulders. He's got, a decent angle to his shoulders. Now, the steeper the shoulder angle, the rougher a horse is to ride, and plus the shorter his stride, and usually the worse athlete he is. This horse, he's got just like a medium angle to his shoulder, which is fine. He's going to be decent to ride. He's not going to be overly rough. Now, if he had more angle to his shoulder, he would be even smoother to ride and maybe even a better athlete. And then we look how his neck ties in to his chest. It comes out of his chest relatively high, so it's nice and clean. If the bottom of his neck tied into his chest any lower, it would make him heavy on the front end. And you sure don't want that. That usually means a horse that's not a good athlete. I sure want to see that neck coming out of his chest fairly high, but I want to see it on the top side fairly level. You want that top line to be level, so it has a good look. You don't want that high-headed look, very detracting from a horse's appearance. And let's continue on down his top line. He's got pretty decent withers. Withers are prominent, not real high, not too low. He's not mutton withered. If they don't have any withers, the saddle's not going to stay where it belongs. And if we go to his back, he's got a little bit of dip to his back right behind the withers. That's fine. Some horses are straighter backed than that, don't have any dip at all. Some horses have more dip than that, kind of sway backed. And as long as it's not overly sway backed, I don't really worry that much about it. And of course, people are going to say, yeah, but the saddle's going to bridge his back. Well, you know what? If that saddle tree fits the angle of his body and his shoulders and the rear part of the saddle, those bars match the angle over his croup, it's okay if that saddle bridges a little bit. That's no big deal. I've experimented with that time and time again, for the last, 30 years, and I've never really had a problem because the saddle bridged. Just never did. All right, then let's go back to his croup. His back is not too long and it's not too short. He's got, to me, that's the perfect length back. Strong. It's strong over the croup. Over his loin. And then we go down farther over his croup, and notice how his tail ties into his croup. He's got a real low tail set, And what that usually means is he's going to be a good stopper. He's going to use his hind end real good. If I had a choice between a high tail set and a low tail set, I'm going to take the low tail set every single time. All right, now let's look at his hip. We look at his length of hip, from the point of his hip to the point of his hindquarters. It's nice and long. He's going to be strong. The hip goes down his back leg, ties in real low to his back leg. Again, signifies he's going to be strong. Now, I've had some horses that were short in the hip, and they were still strong because they were real deep to the flank. And if you look at this horse from the top of his loins or the top of his croup down to the bottom of his flanks, you see how deep he is there? That is probably the most important factor when it comes to having a horse that can stop hard. If they're strong through the flank, they usually can really stop. And if they're cut up in the flank like a greyhound dog, that's a real weakness. Really hard for those horses to stop. This horse, he's almost as deep to the flank as he is to the heart girth. Just extremely strong. And if you look at the champions in both reining and cutting, both events where a horse really has to stop hard, you'll see almost all of them are deep to the flank like this. I've seen exceptions, but that's what they are, exceptions. And, it's the same with the length of back. I want a medium to a short-backed horse. I really don't want a long-backed horse. But here again, I've had exceptions. I've had horses that were long-backed that, they were winners. They could darn sure get you a check. They weren't going to just, clean house because they weren't strong enough. But, I had one that was, her back was so long you could put 2 saddles on her, but she put me in the finals of like 10 aged events right in a row. She never could win them, but she was always in that top 5. Even if there was 100 head in the event, she would always end up in that top end. Really liked her. Okay, let's move down to this horse's legs. Let's start with the front legs. So you notice his cannon bones are really short in comparison to his forearms, and that's a biggie. If their cannon bones are short like this, it means they're going to have less knee action. They're going to be a better mover. They're going to move with keeping their feet fairly close to the ground. If a horse is long in the cannon bones, it's going to cause them to have a lot of knee action, and it's just not going to look as good. It's just not going to look as good. I want short cannon bones in relation to the forearms. Better athlete, better mover. We go on down, look at the angle of his pasterns. Perfect angle to the pastern, and the pasterns are medium length. If his pasterns were too long, it would have a tendency to be weak, and his fetlocks would hit the ground when he's loping or doing anything hard. We don't want his fetlocks hitting the ground. If his fetlocks are too short, he's going to be rough to ride, and the concussion on his body is going to be amplified, and we don't want that either. So we look at the angle of his pasterns. We look at the angle of his hooves. The angle of his hooves are the same as the angle of his pasterns, as it should be on a normal horse. So I like all of that. Let's move to the hind legs, and his tail's kind of covering up his hind legs. Let's move on and get a better look at his hind legs. Okay, here we go. So here he is under saddle, and we can get a good look at his hind legs. And here again, we see short cannon bones in relation to the length of his gaskins. He's got low hocks. He's got a nice angle to his hocks. Some horses have too much angle, which is called sickle hocks, and it'll cause them to pop curbs right below their hocks, the point of their hocks. And all a curb is a bowed tendon on the hind leg, and it's caused by too much angle in the hock joint. And that just causes too much strength on that rear tendon. You don't want that. The opposite of that is a horse that doesn't have enough angle there in his hock, and that's called post leg. And if they're post-legged, they're usually going to have rear pasterns that are a little bit too long and drop too far, number one, it looks bad. And number two, I've had post-legged horses that, were pretty good athletes, but I didn't have them. They weren't good enough athletes to be big-time winners, and I really didn't have them long enough in training to know if they were going to stay sound or not. But whatever the case, I don't like a post-legged horse. I don't like it. Again, like I say, we got the short cannon bones, the pasterns, the right length, the right angle. Yeah, I like everything about it. And you can see his head right there. Let's just to reiterate, nice flat forehead, big nostrils, short mouth, nice big kind eye, small ears. You don't want a horse with really long ears. It just looks bad. Yeah, I like this horse's conformation. Again, I wish his neck was a little bit longer, but it's not so short that I can't live with it. Yeah, I really like this horse. So here we got a shot of this horse from the front. Here again, the first thing, the first thing that strikes me when I see the horse in this position, what a nice looking head. See how wide he is between the eyes? Nice wide forehead. I love that. And that usually means a calm horse, a horse that has a brain, a good-minded horse. And you notice his eyes are out on the corners of his skull, and that's pretty important too. I don't like horses that have sunken-in eyes, or the size of their head is almost straight up and down. There's no corner where the eyes are, and I just think that's pretty important. Again, his ears look really good. I like the position of them on his head. Believe it or not, there are horses, their ears are in weird positions. I've seen those. It just looks weird. His muzzle is small, but his nostrils are large. Yeah, really like the looks of his head. And we go down to his chest. Notice he has a medium chest. It's not too narrow. It's not too wide. If I've got a choice between a really wide chest or a really narrow chest, I'm going to take the narrow chest. Some people just, I want a horse with a nice, big, strong chest. Well, okay, but 9 times out of 10, that horse isn't going to be very athletic. There's exceptions. I've seen exceptions, but, that's what they are, exceptions. I want a medium chest, and if I have to, even a narrow chest. It just means he can move his front end a lot better. He's a better athlete. We look at the way his front legs come out of his chest. Some horses, their front legs are coming out way out on the corners of the chest. That's no good. That's usually a bad mover. That's usually a bad athlete. I want those legs coming out normal. And we look between the front legs and we see that muscling. It's in the shape of a V. Got to be that way. Some horses, there is no V. It goes straight across. And those usually aren't very good athletes. It's a small thing and a lot of people miss it, but it's big if you want a good athlete. And we're looking at the horse's body in general. He just looks good. Nice round hip. We look at his hind gaskin muscles, nice and strong. I like this horse. Okay, here we're watching this horse move, and let me back it up a little bit. Okay, so we're watching this horse walk away, and if you ever are going to purchase a horse, you want to stand directly behind him and watch that horse travel. One of the worst things is we'll see one leg wing in, swing in, and almost hit the opposite hind leg. And, some horses actually do hit the opposite leg. And, man, you don't want that. I've had horses like that. Actually, I've had a couple of horses that did that actually were big time winners. But if I had my choice, I want those legs and feet moving straight ahead. Now, if they wing in a little bit, and if you watch this horse move, his left hind does wing in a little bit as he walks. I can live with that, but you just don't want it to be extreme. You also want to pay attention to the top of the hips. The top of the hips are going to rise and fall as the horse steps, and you want that to be symmetrical. You don't want one hip, consistently higher than the other hip. It needs to be symmetrical. And if he's standing square, he should be level. That's kind of a biggie, to tell you the truth. Also, you want to pay attention to the symmetry of the hindquarters. It's real common for horses to have one side of the hindquarter smaller than the other side. So you look at his tail divides the hindquarters. You want to see the same size on both sides. If one side is small, there's something going on there. Either that horse has lameness problems, or nerve problems, or something's causing that side of his hip not to develop as much as the other side. That's kind of a big red flag. Got to look for it. All right, let's watch him more. So he's winging in a little bit with that left hind, but we can live with that. All right, so there's the top of his hindquarters. Now, it's not level because he's got his left leg forward and his right leg back. But if he was standing square, we would want to see the top of his hips being level. Okay, right here, this is something, it doesn't seem like a big thing, and it probably isn't, but I like to see it. So I'm turning this horse to his right. And what does he do? He moves his right hind up underneath his body, like a performance horse should when he's stopping or rolling back. And he's going to turn with that inside pivot foot. Like I say, probably not a big thing, but I sure like seeing it. Okay, so here again, as he's walking forward, we don't want to see the foot winging in. Now his right front, was winging in a little bit, not bad. I could live with it, but you don't want it winging in so much where it's going to be smacking the opposite foot or the opposite leg. All right, so here again, we're looking at his chest, nice medium chest, nice V muscling between his front legs, nice head, good gaskin muscle, good looking hip, and we're going to look at his front legs. Okay. Now, what I'm about to say, pretty darn important. So you kind of want to, pay attention. So we see his legs are coming out of his chest, or coming out of his front end in a nice normal position. We don't want to see him out to the corners of his body. That means bad athlete, rough ride. This is what you want to see. And if you look down his right front leg, that would be on the left side of your screen, you see the forearm comes down straight right through the middle of the knee, and the cannon bone comes out right in the middle of the knee as it goes down. The pastern comes out of the fetlock right down the middle, and his hoof is coming out from the pastern right down the middle. That's pretty much a straight line, give or take a little bit here or there. And you got to have that. If anything's out of line, you're asking for problems, lameness problems, soundness problems. One of the worst things is if the cannon bone is coming out of the outside edge of the knee. That's called bench knee. And if he has that, if that knee is to the outside, if that cannon bone is coming out of the outside edge of the knee, he's going to pop splints on his cannon bone on the inside. Guaranteed. I've never seen an exception. And the horse, that's a real weakness. That's a real weakness there. That horse could really injure that leg easily. Same if the pastern is coming out of the fetlock off to one side or the other. Here again, that's a weakness, and he's going to develop calcium deposits because of that. It's a bad deal. That needs to be as straight as possible. Yeah, needs to be as straight as possible. And when I'm looking at this, overall, this is the type of front end I want to see. I don't want to see anything weird. Yeah, I don't want to see anything weird. I want all that to be clean. Again, the length of his cannon bones in relation to his forearms is excellent. I love that. All right, we're going to look at his hind end. All right, now he's standing square. The top of his hips are pretty much level. Now he's not standing perfectly square. You can see one hind foot's a little bit farther forward than the other, but overall, that's a good look. I like that. And you can see he's got plenty of outside gaskin muscle, plenty of inside gaskin muscle, and his hind legs are relatively straight. Zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so you notice his right hind foot turns out a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And on a cutting horse, and most performance horses, that would not be, an issue at all. But if this was going to be, an open reining horse, a hind foot that turns out is a real problem. Because when that horse slides to a stop, and they're going to be sliding, 20 feet or so, if that hind foot turns out, that horse can't slide straight, make railroad tracks, make a set of 11s. That hind foot that turns out is going to want to slide out to the outside, and that horse is going to spread too far with that leg, and he's going to have to come out of the slide and put his leg back in where it belongs, and then continue the slide. It's a bad deal. Now, you can help that a lot by shoeing this horse right. Now, that foot's always going to turn out. And if he's a mature horse, don't let your shoer, say, oh, we can fix that. We can make his foot turn in. If his bones are already set, you're not going to be able to do that without soaring that horse up. But here's what you do instead. When you shoe him with sliding shoes behind, on the foot that turns out, don't put that shoe on the same direction that the hoof is pointing, out. Turn that shoe so the shoe is pointing straight ahead, even though the hoof is pointing out. And by pointing that shoe straight ahead is really going to help that horse slide straight. I've experimented a lot with that, and most horses, that works pretty darn good. Now, it's not going to work if that hind foot turns out, a bunch. But a little bit like this, hey, you can compensate for that. Now, and we're looking at the horse's front legs now. You can see how straight they are. They look good. Yeah, everything here looks really good. Okay, let's stop the video so I can give you some additional information. I'll leave links to them in the description box below the video. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and click that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so YouTube notifies you when I upload a new video. You can leave your comments and questions in the comment section below the video. Oh, and don't forget to go to my website and get that free membership. It'll give you access to all kinds of good stuff. I mean, you'll learn a bunch. I'll have a link to it down below also. Okay, wait for the next video to pop up and click to watch it. That's all for now. Take care.